Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, when I was a kid, my parents made me walk the plank. We didn't have a dog. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Undaunted 2200 Callisto from Osprey Games. We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. In Undaunted 2200 Callisto, two players take on the role of either the Lunar Frontier Authority, the LFA, which is kind of the government of Callisto, or the Breakers, which are the workers who are not too happy about their contracts. Anyway, negotiations break down and these two factions go to war. Now, I'm assuming you've already played some of the games in the Undaunted series. If you haven't, you can go back, check out my reviews for Undaunted Normandy, North Africa, Stalingrad, Battle of Britain. The gameplay is very similar to those. I'm just going to highlight some of the differences and give you my thoughts. Now, as I mentioned, this is a science fiction version of the Undaunted series, the first that didn't take place in World War II. So what's going to happen here is essentially the same thing. You're going to get a number of cards in your deck, cards in your supply. You're going to have tokens on the board. Now, where we have some pretty significant differences here is instead of setting up the tiles like we do in the regular Undaunted games, here we have game boards. In fact, we have 4 two-sided game boards, each corresponding to a specific scenario. Now, this game has control rules from Undaunted Stalingrad. Essentially, you can take control of a space, but if somebody else has control and they have a unit there, then of course you can't do that. Now, one of the other major differences here is elevation. Now, essentially, you've got different kinds of elevation. You got elevated spaces. You have bridges. Then kind of areas beneath the bridge. You can't shoot directly up and down if you're in those spaces. But generally, that's one of the things that's going to be going on. You may shoot level, you may shoot down, or you may shoot up. And what this means is you're going to be rolling different kinds of die. You're going to be rolling a 10-sided die if you're firing level. If you are firing down, you're going to be rolling the 12-sided die, and if you're firing up, you're going to be rolling the 8-sided die. Now, this version also has mechs. Now, mechs are not lying down tokens, they're stand-up standees here. And they operate kind of in a similar way as the tanks did in Undaunted Reinforcements. Essentially, what happens here is you've got cards, gunners, navigators, commanders that can move and fire with these mechs on the board. Now, of course, some units have ratings for how they can hit those units. And of course, there are spaces on the board where the mechs cannot go. Also, just like regular units, mechs can be suppressed. If a mech is suppressed, you simply attach a red ring base to the bottom of that mech, and that shows that they cannot activate until they remove that ring. Now, your actions and cards here are very similar to what we see in the other Undaunted games. You do have a few differences. For instance, you have a pulse weapon. Some of the mechs have pulse weapons, which means not only can you hit somebody, but you can also push them out of one space and into an adjacent space that they've already raconteered. Some units also have Pathfinder, which works like a scouting action, but you can just kind of go ahead and raconteer 2 spaces out in front of you or whichever direction, but you still have to take the interference cards. The interference cards. These are essentially the Fog of War cards. They act in a very similar way to the Fog of War cards. You can only use them for the initiative draw, but you cannot use them for any kind of gameplay purposes on your turn. Now, I should point out too that just like how you have the different kind of squads in the various Undaunted games, here you kind of just have like Force 1, Force 2, and you put the Force 1 and the Force 2 tokens next to the supply card so you know which is which. And very often they're going to spawn in different parts of the board. Now, there's also a number of other tokens that kind of work with various scenarios. You've got civilians, bunkers, buildings, pit traps, comms, etc., etc. And these things are going to come into play as you unlock these other scenarios. The game, of course, is a series of scenarios like the original Undaunted. However, you can play it like a campaign game, and there is a solitaire mode baked into this game as well. Now, each scenario is going to have specific objectives that one side or the other must meet, usually involving gaining victory point spaces, but also perhaps eliminating other units of a specific side that they would require to fulfill their missions. Whichever side, the Breakers or the LFA, that completes their objectives first wins. Undaunted 2200, Callisto. All right, so first of all, I have to say, Ray and I actually made a review together of this game after we played it a few times, and unfortunately, the sound was garbage on it, so I thought, you know what, I'm sorry I can't do it. So Ray's got a lot to say about this game as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you my thoughts, and maybe I'll speak to some of the things he brought up. But this game, of course, like I say, it's the first Undaunted game that is not World War II. Now, if you know me, if you're familiar with the channel, I'm a professional historian. I'm a military historian, and World War II is my field. And so I was very of two minds about this one. On one hand, I do love science fiction themes. I'm a huge fan of science fiction themes. But the way the Undaunted system worked just seemed like it lent itself so well to World War II. Nevertheless, so I was excited about this game. I was excited about this game at the same time lamenting it wasn't going to be another World War II title. I think there's still a lot of great possibilities for World War II that could open up there. In any event, I received this game not long ago. Ray and I have played it a few times now. We played through a few of the scenarios. And I'll tell you right off the bat, this game is tremendous fun. Just like the other Undaunted games, it's great. It's awesome. It is a heavy box. It's a heavy box because, again, you've got four boards, complete boards in there. The tiles, I always like the heavy tiles in the Undaunted series. I thought that was a lot of fun. But it is kind of nice just having your scenarios set up for you. And on the boards, it kind of says off to the side kind of what each side's units are and more information about the scenario, which I really appreciated quite a bit. So we're playing the game, the first game we were playing, and right off the bat, it's very familiar. It's very familiar. At one point, I wasn't quite sure how the mechs integrated with the game, but then I that was entirely on me. There's through no fault of the rule book or anything like that. I just kind of brain fart. I was expecting something else, but when we got everything figured out, it was just great fun. The mechs are cool. The cardboard standees are fun. Kind of a different three-dimensional idea here. But what I really like about this game, and something that Ray really commented on as well, is we both really, really, really liked elevation and the different dice because it really affects your strategy in different ways. Because if you've got to roll, a 7 or higher, but you're shooting up, that means on an 8-sided die, you only got, a 7 and an 8. It completely makes you rethink, how you're counting defense values and whatnot. And because you're dependent upon the dice you're going to roll. So that was really fun. It's a great new system. And maybe if we see further Undaunted games down the road, maybe we'll see that integrated. I would love to see that in the World War II version. You could certainly add elevation when you do games like urban fighting. Like, of course, Stalingrad would have worked. It would have worked great with Stalingrad, but also just hills and stuff like that. I think it would really be a fun system there too. The pulse weapon was pretty cool. When you can actually knock someone out, and that's cool because, of course, when somebody is actually holding, they're hunkering down in a spot that they've taken, and you're trying to just get them out of there. A pulse weapon is pretty cool because you can actually push them out, move your guy in, and flip it if you've got the cards. So that was pretty fun as well. I mean, fundamentally, this plays so much like regular Undaunted, and yet there's so much more kind of well, the theme is great here, the way the theme works with it. Um, the artwork is great, the cards are great, but then too, like I say, with the elevation, the new mech system, it heightens it takes it to a new level. Uh, what can I say? Both Ray and I really loved this game. I believe Ray gave this an 8.5. I gave it an 8. And I think maybe with time, the more I play it, it may grow higher. And I think really right now, it's the reason it's an 8 is maybe just because I'm still kind of in my mind comparing it to the World War II theme. Maybe I got to let that go. But in any event, in its own right, this is a fantastic game. In fact, if you're somebody maybe that doesn't care much for World War II or the traditional war games like that, the science fiction setting may be your thing and it may drag you in. It's a great game. What can I say? Absolutely, this is one you're going to want to check out. So my recommendation is an 8 out of 10. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, I ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd ask you to please give a thumb to this video on YouTube and on Board Game Geek. And if you're so inclined, I'd ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history, fun things like that. It would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe to that channel as well. And if you really do appreciate the content we bring you on this channel, I would humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. You know, a few years ago, I went several months without paying my electric bill. Those were the darkest days of my life.